Welcome back to the Bigwater podcast. Ross Robertson here. You guys know our stuff. You can't not find it, right? If you're looking for Bigwater fishing, YouTube, Instagram,
podcast,
Facebook.
Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, it's everywhere.
So what do we have here? Do you know about Oliver?
I don't know anything.
Fun fact, that's my middle name.
Did not know that either. For how long have we been working together?
12 years.
Yeah, did not know that.
But yeah, so I don't even know, honestly, a lot about Oliver, but I've seen his work. We've done some things kind of on the same page. You know, he fishes with the Linders. I know the Linders do some stuff. So it's almost like he's like the West Coast, like maybe not so pale version of Ross. That could be an insult to him. I'm not sure. But let's get this guy on here because I think you're going to have some interesting questions for this guy because he does kind of the same stuff I do, but yet totally different.
All right, let's bring him on.
Oliver, welcome to the Bigwater podcast. Thank you for giving us your time. I mean, I know how it is, man. You get a lot of people asking for these things, and you're like, you want to do it, but you only got so much time.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be as busy as we both are. So I'll never complain about that, and I appreciate the opportunity to join you guys and talk about this tiny world that we live in. Because obviously we know a lot of the same people and run in some outskirts of these circles here. So right. I've heard rumors of what you guys have been doing on this big water. And that's interesting to me because I'm from small water here in the West Coast. So I'm trying to play more in your world as of late.
I don't even know where to get going because I have so many questions. And again, because we have so many mutual friends, and for years, last couple of years, people have said, "Hey, do you know Oliver? Do you know Oliver? Like, how do we, you guys need to get together." And it's just funny how some recent projects, which we'll get into, we're almost in the same place without being in the same place. But so tell me what big bass dreams. Like that's your, if somebody was to look you up, they're going to see that. Explain that to me a little bit in a short term.
Sure. So I've always been obsessed with chasing these trophy largemouth bass that have been just a huge part of our fishing culture here in Southern California since the late 80s, early 90s is when it really peaked, and all these giant high teen and low 20-pound fish are being caught out of the local lakes in the LA area. And I came into fishing at the age of 10, right at the peak of that. So I'm looking at all these newspaper articles, weekly fishing reports, and these local studs are holding up these absolutely monstrosities of largemouth. And I've always been fascinated by that and all of the associated elements and tackle, the big bait culture that spawned from it, and found a nice little groove as an angler as my arc started to grow, and started figuring out how to catch largemouth bass on a bait this big. When you ask a 10-year-old version of me if I would ever throw a bait that big, I'd be like, "You're crazy. That thing is huge. Nothing's going to eat that." So as I started seeing success and sharing these stories with my friends, my close friends, mind you, they ultimately started calling bullshit on me and pretty much called me a liar through a lot of this storytelling of these experiences I was having with getting packs of giant bass trying to eat these big artificial baits. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And made it a point to actually capture it on video from a very early phase. So this is pre-GoPro. This is like those weird, awkward, not quite the shoulder size like Panasonic,
like the old boombox looking.
But it's when you kind of shrank to about that size.
Yep. And
trying to figure out how to mount it on my little rinky-dink aluminum boat. Ended up borrowing one from a good friend of mine and losing it as I got hit by a jet ski wake, and it tipped over, clunk. So I've been trying to capture video of these incredible sequences of fish, and have been able to capture a ton of dope videos and sharing it initially with just some friends. And eventually I just started amassing a library of it, and they're like, "Man, you got to put out a DVD." And this is when DVDs were a thing. And I was like, man, I don't know. But super long story condensed short, we ended up putting out this DVD as a series of DVDs is how I envisioned it. So the fundamental base of Big Bass Dreams was always the content. Obviously, we've evolved with the times to deliver it through all these different other platforms instead of selling DVDs out of back of a trunk or something. But at the end of the day, Big Bass Dreams is really a movement and a collection of like-minded anglers that are super passionate about big fish especially, but overall the fishing culture and all the different nuances of different fishing cultures as I penetrate and travel through the country and engage with different parts of the country and seeing the unique fishing cultures that stem from them. So yeah, Big Bass Dreams, man. We like catching big fish.
I like it. I'm going to bust your chops a little bit because it's kind of funny, even though you weren't involved with this, but somebody, not that long ago, they were like, it's been a little while ago. They're like, maybe it's a couple of years ago. I don't know. At any rate, they're like, oh, you got that wood boat like that Oliver guy. And I was like, what? And I was like, dude, I wrapped my boat in wood. Like it looked like a wood ark. Dude, okay. I went all out. There was lots of people loved it or they hated it, but you know what they did? They talked about it. You know what I mean? And so I was like, all right. So then they saw your thing, and I was like, I literally with this one guy, I was like, I had to go back and I was like, why don't you look at some dates on that, bro? I got no thing against this Oliver dude, and that boat's fly he's got. Like I like the whole thing, but I did that way before this guy. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be that guy. But I mean, the guy he was bringing a little heat to me, and I'm like, no, I didn't copy anybody, and you didn't even know me, so it's not like you were doing that. But it's just funny.
Yeah, I thought I was doing something completely unique, and was breaking barriers and setting bars and all that. But like that came about a small boat project, and I had built a custom deck on a 13-foot Gregor aluminum boat. It's actually just outside the office here, and I took a photo of it when we finished sealing the wood deck for C-Deck application and posted it to Instagram. And lo and behold, that was by far the most engaging photo I'd ever posted in the history of my.
Me too.
And I'm just like, and it was just bare wood at the time. And I'm just like, damn, really? So that kind of got my wheels turning. And at the same time, I was scrolling through one of my brand partners, C-Deck's Instagram stories, and they happened to be at some trade show, and they had panned with their camera real quick. And I saw one little tiny like sample up in this corner, and it was actually wood grained C-Deck. And I was like, yo, hold on. So I reached out to my team there, and I was like, please tell me I can do my entire boat in this. So the first boat project was the little boat that I call the 1.0. It's a rebuild to pay homage to my first bass boat. But it's just a whole nother level of ridiculousness. It's got live scope. It's got an Altera, like brand new motor, C-Deck, obviously, like dual. It's stupid, but that's where that inspiration came from. Because I'd never really seen it in fishing. Right, you occasionally run into those old school, like actual wood boats, like on the water, and
it's becoming really popular. A lot of guys are putting them on the back of their boats here, like on the Great Lakes, for their name and stuff. And a lot of charter boats have it on the floor because it doesn't show the dirt and stuff as much. But it's the same thing. That photo. Funny story, even like, so the wrap guy literally looked at me and he's like, man, I'm just going to tell you, when we got to rip this off and put another one on because you're not happy, it is what it is, bro. And I'm like, we'll just run with it. And it's a year. You know what I mean? It is what it is.
Yeah.
I start getting calls about the boat because, it's kind of like you want to release this, right? This is part of our deal. Yeah. I start getting calls like, dude, that wood boat looks kind of cool. And I'm like, it's still at the wrap shop 3 hours from my house. I'm like, what are you talking about? One of the guys that was wrapping it took a picture, put it up, and it started going viral on his. Dude, I could have choke slapped the tar out of him. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, dude, wait. Oh, I was legit mad because I'm like, dude, that's not your deal to do, aside from the fact that now the shotgun, the trigger got pulled, right? It is what it is, but
yeah, that sucks. That's
why. But at least you're thinking like I am. We're outside the box, but not like ludicrous.
Yeah, I try to do things just below the line of ludicrous. So.
Right. Just a little bit. Well, and that's why I want to know, because it's just like me, like everybody from when I started, from my parents, of course, to my accountant and everybody else is like, you can't do this, man. You can't do this. I'm like, well, no, you didn't try it. And maybe you weren't smart enough to work hard enough. Right. So tell me how a kid from California ends up doing some of the same stuff, which we'll talk about, that we both are doing some stuff with the lenders. You know, how does this, I mean, because it doesn't happen overnight, first off, I understand that. But give me a few of the steps here and boom, 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 quick on how we're rolling here.
Yeah, ultimately, it's been an organic growth and learning process, and learning through trial and error, and minimizing the mistakes, and just sucking a little bit less as the years go by. It's pretty much how my fishing has evolved, right? You suck a little bit less every year. Now I'm on year, 19. Oh, no.
You know, it's
count right.
It's funny you say that, because it's exactly right. I tell people all the time, a guy that wins a tournament just sucked the least amount. Because the fish always win. Because even if you think you're a rock star, you're like, oh, I caught 20 today. Dude, there was 10,000 of them down there that told you screw yourself. Oh,
it's insane. I've done a little bit of underwater filming, and it's an eye opener of like how many of those fish are ignoring us completely.
Yeah, it's like 100%.
Wow. Like, this is crazy. I would have never guessed there were literally 200 bass on this spot. And You got one of them to eat almost every other cast, and you think that's like wide open. Right. Like, literally the rest of the school wasn't even paying attention to you.
You had 2 girls in the entire school that talked to you, and you thought you were a pimp.
You thought you could go and get every single girl. It's like, no,
they all said, nah, no, kid.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and my experiences outside of the fishing industry and within the fishing industry have all accumulated into sucking a little bit less at everything that we got to do, right? Because not only do you have to be a proficient angler, you've got to be proficient at marketing yourself. Got to not be a douchebag. You're just an asshole on top of that. You got to be able to run a business, and you got to be able to communicate with people and communicate ideas in an articulate manner to where you can actually connect with others. And frankly, I think now in my second half of my fishing arc, I've definitely been more open to sharing and helping others facilitate some of these special experiences I've worked so hard to live and create. And that's been a big part of it, because my willingness to finally open up as an angler, which is a hard thing, especially for a younger version of myself. Right? You're probably real similar. We spent every waking moment and opportunity on the water in the pursuit of our big fish dreams. And like, who is someone else to come up and just ask for that information in the shortcut?
Well, and it's funny because we were talking about that today. We were shooting a video, and one of the things I said is, hey, we appreciate all you guys, but we are doing this for free. Like, you're just taking this, and I've spent a lot of money and time. This is how I make my job. And you know, sometimes when you get comments from people, I'm sure you're the same way. Like 20 years later, it doesn't bother me, but sometimes I just kind of think, I'm like, dude, you sitting on your couch, you're an asshole, because you're upset because I wouldn't tell you the make and model number of some lure. Hell, I don't even remember. And I probably can't because of business anyhow. But dude, I gave you the keys to the kingdom. And you know, for me, it might have been easier than you because of some of the guys that I trained with, if you will. And Al Linder, when I was in my teens, still told me on the Great Lakes as it was getting ready to break loose, he was like, Bub, here's the deal. You need to teach these guys. You need education. and Al right out of the gate, and he was like, you need to listen to me. And I did. And so, you know, I timing was right, like in any business, right? But I was smart enough to kind of jump on that, because the same as you, like, hey, dude, I'm winning a bunch of tournaments here. And like, you're thinking about, like, at that time, you know, it's like, hey, tournaments and glory. But yet then I looked at it, and again, Al and those guys, he goes, hey, is Bill Dance fishing any tournaments? You know, this 20 some years ago. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. And, you know, you start looking at this and you're like, hey man, besides Kevin Van Dam, and yes, there are some exceptions, most of these guys do bigger and better things when they get into a different deal, and it's more sustainable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've dabbled in tournament fishing all my life and took a big step away from it as we started focusing on these big fish and the content that surrounded it. And I've actually been able to leverage myself to a position to where I'm actually financially able and free to compete on a Bassmaster Open Tour and all 9 events. And I got there by not tournament fishing, by focusing on
a whole. You get drugged back in.
Man, that's always been a childhood dream, to be able to compete at that high level against these hammers. So it's a part of my personal and fishing arc and story. Like I gotta see, I gotta try it. But at the same time, I know that's not where my heart lies. It's something I'll probably dabble with on and off through the rest of my life, but it's not the first thing I want to go do. It's not even at the top of my list of like things to check off, but it's definitely up there.
Well, I mean, it seems like, again, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but I don't know your gig, right? Like some of the guys that I would have on here, like, dude, the Cali big bass swim bait guys, that's not my wheelhouse. But I like what you're doing, and we, like I said, we parallel so much that we're more similar than you could imagine. And it seems like kind of like what I've done. Explain how you've diversified, because I see you doing some things that maybe other people don't know about, or people listening to my deal don't know from you. But you're not just like throwing swim baits for big bass anymore. Like you're doing the whole deal, right?
Yeah, people don't understand that this lure right here is not the secret key to the success I've had on the water. It is all the other experiences with something as fundamental as a jig or a plastic worm or a crankbait or a spinnerbait, or insert whatever lure you want in there, even live bait. And those engagements with fish across the board in different scenarios that have given me insight to how I can properly present something like that to a fish, or something like this big to a fish. This is a bait that I work really similar to a big walking stick bait. It comes from experience and having the foresight to try to apply whatever the tool is, big bait or not, into fooling these fish. So I had an entire youth of trying to master all these different lure techniques. So when I look back even now, I'm looking back into my prior experiences to draw inspiration to try to fit these puzzle pieces together. So I've always prided myself on being a versatile angler, and really I always got a kick out of learning how to catch something on a new lure. And that persists now, and that's gone beyond largemouth bass, it's gone beyond smallmouth bass, it's gone beyond muskies, it's gone beyond saltwater, inshore, offshore, it's gone beyond international exotic species like Murray cod and barramundi. A lot of the same fundamental pieces are there. You just got to account for subtle little nuances for a fishery. For like
100%. I mean,
I fell deep into the muskie rabbit hole the last 3.5 years. And once I could figure out how to wrap my head around the complexities of rigging to account for the teeth, everything else is the same.
It really is. And I guess, I agree. I mean, full disclosure, I hate green carp, as I call them. But even like when you take that, like, I guess part of my thought process was, because I think we're on the same page with what you just said, but the decision to diversify is even more within the business aspect of things. Again, I mean, I'm assuming here you basically have left California, right? Or you just travel?
I'm home in California now. I spend 2 months out of the year total here.
Yeah. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about that, because again, the fishing is one aspect. And those are the things that when people listen to this, like they're listening, I don't think they listen to that as much as like, hey, this dude, what's he doing to make this happen? Because that crosses California lines, that crosses bass lines. It doesn't matter if there's some 10-year-old kid listening to this or some guy that wants to be a walleye guide. Like, it's the same kind of deal.
Yeah, as far as the diversity in my strategy to take on the business side of what we do, it honestly stems a lot from the diversity that I incorporate into my fishing. There's so many parallels, man, that I draw from my other aspects of my life and my fishing life. that I apply back and forth. And being able to be diverse allows you to weather the storm when things shift, like our platforms, right? When I first started with Big Bass Streams, Instagram and Facebook were huge. Like and it's always been organic growth, by the way. Never paid for followers, likes, comments, any of that fake engagement. You could tell. But the content always spoke for itself. And those two platforms catapulted the brand right away and created this audience that I was now able to leverage with these brand partnerships that I've aligned myself with. Because now you got a captive audience that's paying attention to pretty much everything that we're doing. And I think it's funny that people will underestimate the power of that audience. And some people think an audience of 5,000 or 10,000 followers or subscribers or whatever on each platform is small in comparison to whoever else that might have 500,000 or 3 million, et cetera, et cetera. But think about if you put 5,000 people or 10,000 people in one place and they're all paying attention to what you had to say. Like, that's impactful if you play it right. So being able to be diverse and adapt to the ever-changing landscape of how people digest content is the most important thing. And then at the same time, you got to be putting out relevant content that is hopefully positively affecting your culture, no matter what the space is. And for me, it's fishing all the way around. And I've been frustrated as a creator the last few years seeing this rise of this certain style of content for the sake of attention and viewership at the cost of freaking self-dignity. And
we may have just, I'm going to interrupt you once, like we may have just shot a podcast before you.
Yeah.
And totally, I mean, it couldn't have been a different type of person, right? And in the industry and everything. And we literally had this same conversation. And that was one of my kind of questions for you. I was interested to see what your take was on this.
Yeah, man, I'm not cool with the way things are going. Like, there needs to be a righting of the ship and a balance brought back to the force. And that's why I'm working hard with groups like Meat Eater, and all the brand partners that value quality content. You won't ever see me selling out and putting out trash for the sake of attention. It's not the same thing, man.
And when people say even quality content, it's like, I think that's even, I would like to hear your take on it. I mean, for me, there's a lot of people that are just fraudulent. There's a lot of people that, even with some projects me and you have done that we won't talk about, there's people that get involved in these and they show up and the dudes can't catch them.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah.
And the cream always rises to the top, and real always recognizes real, man. And eventually, if you're just trying to fake it till you make it, like, the people that you should be looking to for just respect as a peer or a colleague, like, those are the people that matter to me. There might be 50 of those in all of fishing. I didn't give a crap about the 50 million people watching on whatever platform. If Al Linder thinks I'm a clown, I'm not cool with that.
Al Linder actually said to me, he was like, some of this garbage content. And I was like, that's like Al doing some serious cursing if you know Al. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, if he says that, I mean, producer dude, as my content man, like, I have a content.
Yeah.
Man. Like, I'm big time, right?
It comes down to just, again, content. I mean, how many times have I said this is good content? The other people kind of fit in that entertainer, or I don't know what that category is.
Like we said on the other
actors.
We said on the other podcast, like, if with me and him, we've been together for 12 years. If something happens, I let it run. Like, I'm not too serious about myself, but I'm never going to intentionally get into a fight with somebody at the boat launch or on another boat in order to, you know where I'm going with that. That's happened. To try to make like a scene, to use that as an intro to try to get more people to click on the video. Right. And that's happening a lot. And I wonder how you deal with that, because I think I call it the I word, influencer. Like, you're an influencer, but you can catch them and you've done your own thing. You've built your own brand organically. So do you feel like because you've done it that way, that this other stuff, I mean, has it taken away from you in your mind in other people's eyes, but they don't even know it? Because people like me just, or anybody, I mean, that's really doing a lot of fishing goes, this is junk. Like, it's harder to qualify somebody right now.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. It's complex. At the end of the day, those people don't affect my world. I continue to leverage my position and do more of what I want to do whenever I want to do it with complete autonomy and freedom. So regardless of what anybody else is doing, I'm in control of my own destiny. Now, I can't help or even hate on like some of these other people doing what they're doing, but like, you're not going to find me wanting to engage with that person if I had a one-on-one with them.
Yeah, you're like, more mature. You're more mature than I am at that point. But yeah, I think I've got there. You know, I've gotten there myself. Producer dude, you probably would agree. Where now you just got to let it go, because it was actually a Forrest Wood told me an old thing. Ranger Boats, Forrest Wood. You know, he said, you know, the problem, he says, is when you want to get around all this stuff, he says it's like the old pig farmer. And I'm like, what? But Forrest always had a good one, right? And he said, yeah, he said, you get them pigs down there in the pen, they get all nasty. And he says, you run down there to teach them a lesson. He says, pretty soon you're rolling around in the mud. And he says, Mom up at the house can't tell the difference between the pig and the farmer. He said, you see what I mean? And, you know, I don't know, maybe young kid don't get that deal, but I understand it now.
Yeah. The younger kids don't get a lot of things, and that just comes from inexperience. I was guilty of that myself and would get caught up in these traps of negative energy, and just came to realize like, man, if I just put my energy on my own projects and trying to visualize my own ambitions, like that's the best way you can manifest that energy.
So what are the projects? You know, obviously you do YouTube video, you're putting content out, working with companies like we said, like media and stuff. But what are your, like, give me an idea what a month is like, or what things transition that you're doing for the Oliver's, you know, current day business?
Man, it's complex. There's way too much on my table at any one time, which is how I like to operate. Multiple irons in the fire, and real killers move in silence, man. So I don't really need to like divulge a whole lot of the projects. It's just one thing after another, and it keeps coming and it keeps coming, and hopefully it gets better and it gets better. But got my hand in a lot of things, and just about all of it is stuff that I'm super excited to move forward with and get better
So without naming names or getting anything specific, because I pick up what you're throwing down. I mean, is this video stuff, or is this like other digital platforms you think, or are you trying to, because I think, you know, a guy like me, again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I always try to align myself with the companies that have not only the exposure, but that are looking, and you pretty much said this in a different way, that are looking for guys that can actually catch them, and they're not trying to put on some type of clown extravaganza. And there's not as many of those places out there as there probably should be. But, you know, some of that's print stuff. Some of that's, you know, are you writing some articles? Are you just doing the video things, just depending on where it's coming up, or doing some of your own, you know, unique organic content? Or
yeah, it's just it's really diverse. I mean, there's going to be some more written stuff coming. Obviously, video is a huge form of content that's digested across all those different platforms now. And at the base of it, I do pride myself on being able to keep catching these hard to catch ass fish in public water. Like, no one can ever take that away from me. That's the most empowering thing, is that I can go anywhere and do what I do, regardless of the scenario. So that needs to come across in the content, and hopefully people can better help understand why that content can be more impactful for them as viewers. Because then they should be able to take that insight and apply it in their own manner in their own lives. Does that make sense? Versus if you watch, you know, a challenge video shot on someone's backyard pond or whatever, and the casual observer might not understand the dynamics behind that and think, oh man, I could take a piece of lettuce and slap it on the water and catch fish too. And it's just like, where do you draw the line between what's real and what's not? And especially with the growth that we've had in our sport because of COVID, you've got a lot of new eyeballs that don't know the difference.
That's what I asked you about, being able, the internet, just let's forget fishing for a second. If you break your dishwasher, right, or whatever, trying to change, brakes and something, you're like, how to change brakes, how to fix dishwasher. There are some videos, I don't care what topic you pick up, there are some videos you're going to go out there and be like, dude, this guy doesn't know how to use a screwdriver. And then there's other ones that you're like, you talk to a guy that knows how to repair brakes, and he goes, oh my God, you're lucky you didn't lose your hand. Like this guy, even though the guy looks polished and like he knows what he's talking about. And to me, that's that kind of influencer thing where a guy's on there, he's trying to make as much money as he can by acting as an authority on something or a clown, even though he's coming across as an entertainer. And
that's probably where I have the most issue with some people. And it doesn't matter if it's within fishing or not. It's people that are trying to put themselves out there as an authority without a body of work to support it. So that's why the body of work is important. So when someone comes across content from that person with a hefty and validated body of work, you can have the confidence that he's telling you the proper way to fix that dishwasher. Oh, he's aligned with the dishwasher brand. Okay, that makes sense. They shouldn't probably just hire just about any Joe Schmo off the street to show you how to fix their dishwasher. So that's where those brand relationships and partnerships really come into play, and where I take a lot of pride in my partnerships because I've aligned myself with the creme de la creme of each category. And that takes a lot of hard work because you got to earn that spot.
Let me know, without giving me anything specific, what's your kind of general take that you can say on your experience with Das Boat now, having done it a little bit?
Well, this is my third season on Das Boat, and I think I'm the only angler to be on all 3 seasons. And I'll tell you this much, I had the most fun, and I think we shot the best episode of my 3 seasons of experience on that show. And it was very challenging, just like most times when you schedule some kind of fishing related shoot, curveballs get thrown at you. And we had tough conditions to deal with, temperature drops, big storms, and made it really tough. When coming in, people were setting it up to be like, oh, the fish that you guys are targeting, like we catch a whole bunch of them, like without even trying. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go again. I mean, the same attitude was kind of pushed towards our panfish segment of our episode in season 2. And I'm like, you guys are tripping because you guys are taking the panfish for granted, thinking that's going to be the easiest thing. I ended up catching a muskie the first morning in the first hour and a half of fishing. And I was like, I think you guys are underestimating how tough the pan fishing can be if you're on a new body of water like we are. I mean, first we got to locate them. That's the hardest thing. And then I can catch them. But it took, it was harder to figure out where to catch decent panfish than it was the muskies. So season 3 of our episode was incredibly challenging, but that dynamic of actually having to work for the fish that Blaine Chocolate and I were fishing for made every single bite more impactful and every single engagement with those fish more impactful. And that's going to translate through in the content. I mean, you worked with this exact same crew that I did. Those guys from Off the Grid Studios do incredible work.
They worked as a fluid team. They were like they reminded me of like the Navy SEALs of fishing filming. Like they didn't, they grunt or look over and give a nod, and they swept in there, and they definitely, you could tell, and several of those guys are big time fishermen.
Oh, absolutely. Gregson is a hammer. Paul Bork is a hammer. RA was just hitting me up about trying to figure out this white bass or wiper fishery he's got in his backyard that nobody targets. So
dude, that guy's such a pimp. He's like Cher. He only goes by initials. I told him, I was giving him some shit on that. I was like, dude, you're a pimp when you don't have to say it's your full name. I mean, that's just naughty.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that wasn't his full name. Like, that's how much of a G he is. So, yeah, I'm excited to see season 3 unfold, because I think it might be the best yet, and it's been wildly popular. And I've always been amazed and inspired by teams like the Off the Grid guys, but even the whole Meat Eater family as a whole, and their ability to capture those moments that people like you and I get to experience almost on the daily and really transfer it through to the audience in a very engaging and fulfilling way. That's what I mean by relevant content. You look at anything MeatEater has done on the fishing side. So I'm excited to see how much further they can push it on the fishing side.
I mean, me and producer dude, like, he wasn't there for that, obviously, but I was telling him, I was like, dude, this is a whole different level. I mean, me and him are like, hamburger and nickel budget stuff, and we're just hammering stuff. We are guerrilla warfare, and these guys were like nuclear bombs.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, I have been able to take a crappy GoPro, and before that, like a Sanyo little camcorder and the Sony bullshits from, the mid 2000s to get myself to this level. And literally after like spending another week with these guys for the third year in a row, I'm like, all right, I can't make any more excuses when I don't have one of my guys filming with me. I don't have a current producer guy traveling with me. Like I had to freaking pony up and drop another 9 racks just to up my production level.
Damn, son.
Like, naughty. I don't know how to use this thing. Like,
well, what the problem with that is, you hit the nail on the head. When anybody can, if anybody really wants to do this, they can. If they really want to bust their ass, I don't think anybody's born a natural fisherman. People pay attention to details. A lot of my guide clients that are, I look at them like, how the heck did you? They understand stuff that guys I fish tournaments against don't understand. And the dude is. And what do you do? I'm the CEO of so-and-so. And I'm like, now I get it. Because this guy would be successful at whatever he did. Because he pays attention, he listens, he sees the details. And what a lot of people I don't think understand is like you said, yeah, you can have a camera guy follow you and get really good content, but that costs a lot of money. Like, who's ponying up? Or now am I going to eat, ramen noodles here? Because where's this going to go around? And, even if somebody gave you that camera instead of 9 racks, as you say, 9 bands in the middle, you basically, you know what I'm saying? Little ginger kid can still talk it. But now you've got to have somebody to operate that. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't do us any good to be looking through the one side of that camera to do what we need to do.
Totally. And it's just like the fishing, right? And there's a reason why these people by the tens of thousands buy all the high-end electronics, all the high-end rods and reels and baits, and even the high-end boats, and can't figure out how to catch a fish to save their life. It's because they're not asking the right questions, like some of your gifted clients may be asking, right? Like I've got guys under my tutelage. I'm training them to ask the right questions, not just the where I need your GPS coordinates or the bait or stupid ass questions. You need to be asking the why.
That's literally another video that we shot today about asking the right questions.
Yeah, man. So a good angler is going to ask the right questions and pay attention to the things that most people would be overlooking. You got to become an incredible observer.
So what has been your biggest asset? Because again, what you started with, again, not trying to put words in your mouth, but my opinion is a guy that's throwing swim baits in California and starts this and realizes, hey, I video this, you're ahead of your time with some of this stuff. But as you roll into traveling around, doing DOSPO, doing all these other different media things you got going on, it's evolved 100%. So what your roots are, it's the same, but it's different. So what is your biggest asset that you've been able to continually be successful and, growing that brand?
Man, probably an open mind. Like seriously. I mean, even down on my fishing, right? Like, let me give you an example on the fishing side of things that is translated to how I operate my businesses. And it goes back to having that open mind, and being flexible and adapting to those conditions that affect the behavior of the fish. It's the same thing in business and how it affects the behavior of our audience, our customers. Keeping an open mind and being willing to try something out of the norm has allowed me to become incredibly successful. Like a big portion of the first video was shot in 7 weeks' time in 2012. And a benchmark fish is still a 10-pound fish for anybody across the country. A little bit lower where you guys are from. 7 or 8 pounder is going to be a monster fish up that way. So big fish are relative in size, but here in Southern California, a 10-pound fish is still the benchmark. Now, I was going out there with the mindset of I actually wanted a teener. So a 13-pound plus fish was that was the goal. So I already set this lofty goal that I was trying to reach. And because I was so hyper focused on those bigger fish, I was kind of blowing through 7s, 8s, 9s. Like I literally would not even weigh a lot of those fish and just like dump them back because I wanted this tear, man, where I was so dialed in. I ended up catching 17 largemouth at the 10-pound mark or bigger in that 7-week span. I had 6 limits over 40 pounds. Biggest limit was a 56-pound, 5-ounce limit of 5 fish. And all the while, I was spending 5 to 7 days on the water, and I did not duplicate the fishing from any day to the next. Every single day was a different puzzle. And I had some of my best friends fishing with me on and off throughout that cycle, and they would get stuck in the same mentality as a lot of people. And like, holy shit, yesterday you caught them on this, doing this over here. How come we're not doing that? I'm like, because it's changed. Like they're not over there anymore. They're not doing that, not responding to this style lure. And they would be literally trying to chase my bite as the days would progress. And man, most of them just ended up playing net bitch because they were already thinking too far behind instead of ahead and being super adaptable. So I've taken that and applied it to how I operate my daily routine. Like I'm not an Instagrammer, I'm not a Facebooker, I'm not a YouTuber, I'm definitely not a TikToker. I am.
But yet, with that said, you still do that stuff because
but I
of
still
the partners.
Absolutely. So I still do all of those things, but that's not who I am. If that makes sense. Like these young kids, like especially a year or two ago before TikTok really took hold with that generation, it's like, oh man, you're my favorite YouTuber and I want to be a YouTuber. And I'm like, nah, man, like I'm not trying to like to shut down your dreams and aspirations, but like you should be aspiring to be a dope, whatever you want to be doing that has stuff on a platform like YouTube. So at that point, it doesn't, it's irrelevant what platform your content lives on. It's going to rise to the top. So that's kind of how I'm approaching everything that I'm doing. And things like the Meteor Project and DOSPO, those are new. So stepping out of my comfort zone and trying to take on new projects to explore new potential opportunities is huge. I'm always exploring new opportunities. And I think that comes from like my upbringing and the basics. Like, how old are you?
Me?
Yeah.
Wait, we going on a date now? How old are you?
No, man.
How old are you?
I'm freaking 39.
Dude, I got you.
How old are you?
42.
42. Okay, so you're about the same generation. So I grew up in the Nintendo generation.
Hell yeah, I did.
Prior to Super Nintendo, right? I'm talking like Legend of Zelda. And like
square box.
That's right.
Blow on the cartridge, kid.
Dude, through your shirt so you don't get it wet.
See, I was Atari.
Yeah, producer dude.
I was Atari.
I had very early Ataris.
Yeah, and I always wanted in television, and I was stuck with Atari.
Dude, my uncle had an Atari, and I was so small and frail that I couldn't even like move the joystick. Like that thing was stiff as freaking hell, man. But like a game like Legend of Zelda taught me that I needed to go through this game in every level and literally stab every tree and every rock to see what kind of hidden goodies I could find throughout this video game. And I actually just realized this a couple weeks ago that that's probably why I fish the way I do. And I'm literally going out on the lake and like trying to stab every point, every rock pile, every grass bed, every different water column. And it's created like this methodical approach to fishing and being able to take that and duplicate it everywhere I go.
So you learned all your fishing from Legend of Zelda. Is that what I'm getting? All right.
That's it.
I think he's going for the Nintendo.
I learned from Castlevania. So
I didn't really like that game.
No, neither did I.
You guys are so awesome. we could do this all day because me and you are, like I said, we are polar opposites, but we're pretty identical. So here's a question for you. I'm gonna wrap this up with a long-winded one here. Me and the producer dude were talking about this. One of the other guys, basically in so many words, I've been asked the same thing about 5 times in the last week. So I want to ask you the same question. So basically, guys said to me, like, you're doing all this different stuff. They knew me at the beginning. You know, I didn't have a silver spoon or anything. And they kind of say, like, producer dude said to me, like, are you really having fun anymore? And there's definitely days I'm not. Like you do some of the grunt work and some of the stuff that we have to do. I can't say it beats. I tell myself, I put little inspirational things on my steering wheel every year. Like one year it was cubicle. Some stuff won't mean anything to anybody else, but because I look at that, I spend 200 and some days a year and I look down on when I'm getting beat in waves, you know what I mean? And you're like, could be in a cubicle. Pretty damn good right now, right? Could be in a factory. So, but what I'm getting at is, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that sucks. Nobody watching any of this is like going to feel bad for us, right?
Oh, never.
But at the same point, sometimes we suck the fun out of it just by our mentality. Like I'm sure even you're a pretty more positive guy than I am. I can tell this already, which you need to be. But producer dude, he's always like yelling at me about something with this stuff. And I guess the point is let's put an imaginary thing together. If somebody deposited $10 million in your bank account tomorrow, how would you be doing things different? Or where would Big Bass dreams with a budget and not having to deal with certain things? Because I love my sponsors. I work with a lot of my partners are 10 years plus, a bulk of them. But there are still constraints that if you're being honest with me, you wouldn't deal with if it wasn't for getting paid.
Man, I hear you. That's an interesting question. And this brings up a conversation I was actually having with my girlfriend because she's exploring the potential to enter this space and command an audience of her own and see how far she can push this fishing thing because she has a legit passion for it and she's got a great knack for it. And she makes comments about like wanting to go play the lottery so she can obviously have this large sum of money to be able to do all these things that she sees me working so hard to acquire, and in the form of assets and capital and money to pay professionals like the Off the Grid Studio Squad. Like, you don't think I don't want to travel with those dudes full time and let them shoot everything that I'm doing?
For sure.
Hell yeah, I do. But here's the problem. If you don't earn that $10 million, how do you sustain that level of production? Because when someone takes that away from me,
I like where you're going with that, but that number, maybe let me look at this a little differently.
Honestly, the number is irrelevant.
Right.
The point that I made to her was, you should earn your way to that position to where you have full autonomy and ability to do whatever you want to do, because it wasn't handed to you. Like, nothing's ever been handed to me. I grew up dirt ass poor, man. People see me in this $130,000 bass boat and assume I'm some trust fund baby or a parachute kid, that I'm Asian, so my mom must be rich. Dude, my mom still lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in the hood. Like I'm trying to get her out of there. Like, people died on my street. Like, seriously. Like, so the fact that I got this far on my own is something no one can ever take away from me. And I'd much rather take the longer road to get where I want, because I'll earn it.
So leave me with one thing that you would want my people, because they may not be your people yet, but they're probably going to be, because they're going to check you out now. That's kind of how this whole deal works, right?
Absolutely,
so
brother.
My people know good stuff. And
yeah.
So what do we need to know about Oliver Nye that's either misrepresented or you think that maybe people don't really give a clean shot at?
Now, man, I always judge people off of my own experiences with them. So I invite your audience to come have an opportunity to judge their own experiences through my content.
Producer dude, I have a new business plan. It's going to be called Big Walleye Dreams.
That sounds good. I bet that would work.
Lock down that URL now.
I dabbled with old Walter. He's cool.
Nice. Well, hey, I appreciate your time, and I hope we can do this again. And I know we just kind of, me and you could probably talk all day about this stuff. We just dabbled a little bit, but hopefully some of the guys over that follow what we do will punch on over and like what you do and vice versa. So don't be a stranger. Thanks for everybody for tuning in to Bigwater Podcast. Producer dude, I always forget, so please help me, but check into YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Stitcher,
Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify.
That's why he's
and Atari.
And Atari.
And Legend of Zelda
yes.
and BigwaterFishing.com. Remember, we're everywhere but a jail cell so far. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in. Oliver, thank you for giving us your time. Until the next episode, bro.
Thanks, guys.